the regularly scheduled public meeting of the Shreveport-Caddo Parish Metropolitan Planning Commission. Before we begin, I will ask Mr. Andrews to lead us in an invocation and Mr. Elverson to lead us in the pledge, and you may stand if you wish.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to gather and receive the requests from these, our citizens of our community, both locally and parish-wide. We pray that you continue to bless us and above all, forgive us for our many sins, deeds, and even the thoughts that perhaps were not pleasant in thy sight. We pray that you give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding as we deliberate through these requests. And thank you for allowing us to be called servants. For it is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right. For public hearing agenda items, if you wish to make a public comment on an application, we have MPC comment slips at the speaker's stand next to the podium. For future notification purposes, it's very important that you fill out a slip and drop it in the box when you come forward to speak. Please state your full name, your mailing address, and your zip code before addressing the board. We will call each case on the agenda in order and hear from the first applicant, and then those speaking in favor of the application. 10 minutes will be allotted for the principal spokesperson and 3 minutes for each additional speaker. We will then hear from those wishing to speak against an application. Again, 10 minutes will be allotted for the principal spokesperson and 3 minutes for each additional speaker. One representative of the application can then speak in rebuttal if desired. After hearing comments on each case, the board will then immediately deliberate and vote on the case that's moving on that particular case before moving on to the next case on the agenda. Please note that when the board is deliberating, members of the public are not permitted to comment just during that deliberation time. Any member of the public may request a copy of the board's decisions on a particular case by contacting our office at 318-673-6480 after 1 p.m. tomorrow, or by accessing our website at shreveportcaddompc.com. For consent agenda items and other agenda items not requiring a public hearing, public comments can be made upon request by filling out an MPC comment slip. Okay. Is it acting funny? If comments are requested for a specific agenda item, the chair will offer an opportunity for those comments prior to the commission taking action on the agenda item. All of the MPC board's zoning recommendations are submitted to either the City Council or the Parish Commission for a final decision, depending on the location of the property in question. Please note that it's your responsibility to contact the appropriate governing body about their procedure as related to the matter that you are concerned with. Copies of this document and the phone numbers to contact the governing bodies are available on the table next to the podium and in the entryway to this room. As a courtesy, please remember to turn off all of your cell phones while the board is in session. The commission values your testimony and appreciates your compliance with these procedures, and we very much appreciate your time and coming and being part of this important process. All right. So first we need to, board, have y'all had a chance to review the minutes from the October 2nd meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve by Mr. Joseph, a second by Ms. Smith. Discussion, call for the vote.
Sorry.
All right, the minutes from last month are approved. Thank you. Okay, we have no consent agenda items today, and we have a very short agenda today.
Good.
So our first case number 19308, SC preliminary and final plat. The applicant is Providence Development. Is anyone here to come forward? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Justin Sevier. I'm here for Providence Development Company, 1922 Chestnut Park Lane, Shreveport 71106. So this is for the Grove, which is the new development off of Wallace Lake Road. And we are here to, we have phase 1 completed, and we're building homes in there now and have several sold and underway, and we're just getting ready for our phase 2, just kind of staying ahead of the game and being ready to start construction whenever whenever demand needs it. So if you have any questions for me, then.
Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Spear? Seeing none,
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here in opposition? You can come forward. Welcome.
Welcome. Hello, my name is Kay Thompson. I live at 9898 Wallace Lake Road, which is the property. I have 125 acres directly across Wallace Lake Road from the Grove. My problem with the Grove, I love the subdivision. I have no problem with the growth of Wallace Lake Road in that area over there. The thing that I do have a problem with is the fact that they are filtering 100 acres of their runoff water into my living lake that has been there for 86 years. I have large bass. We've caught 10-pound bass in this lake. We have creatures that live on my land that feed from this lake. I have seen bald eagles land in my lake, pick up fish to feed their young or to feed themselves. From all of the evidence that I found in, like searching the web, talking to the EPA, talking to the endangered species organizations, this is what I found. As rainwater runs off our streets, parking lot, lawns, and other surfaces, it picks up pet waste, pesticides, fertilizers, oils, and other contaminants. This polluted runoff typically is not filtered in the way that wastewater from a treatment plant or a sewage plant is filtered. If the draining water doesn't evaporate or soak into the ground, it flushes straight into local creeks, lakes, and other pathways that adversely affects water quality and aquatic life. So what they've done is they've built a retention pond, and they've taken the absorbing surfaces and turning them into hard surfaces, as in streets, culverts, that they're putting drains in the streets that lead to their drain lines that lead straight to their retention pond, and then within the width of the road, they send it straight to the ditch, straight to my pond. There is no chance for the absorption. There is no chance for any of the contamination to be filtered through land, grass, trees, in the way that it was done before they had the subdivision or before they put the subdivision in place. I have talked to a lot of the heads of the project about my concerns. And I also met with their engineer because I wanted to try to understand, how are you filtering this water? From the best of my knowledge, they are not. Now, we not only get the drain from the entire 132 acres is that property, because I looked at it myself when I was buying my 125 acres. Now, my pond, there's a lot of responsibility with that, which is, one big one is a spillway. Since they have built their retention pond, it has destroyed my spillway. The water has increased so much that it ended up eroding out my spillway, and I had to rebuild it. That cost me $125,000. The first phase of my spillway cost me $85,000. Didn't work. It was running over the sides of my spillway, and therefore I had to call someone back to add wings to my spillway to send this down. I still don't know if it's going to cover their spill, but when I asked their engineer, did he think at all about the fact that I have responsibility with the water that goes through my property. Did he think of my spillway at all? And he said, nope. I've asked them, are y'all going to help me in any way with that? Nope. So besides that fact that it's increased my water flow tenfold, I don't know. I could probably get numbers to it if I get someone out there to put those numbers to it, and it may be more than 10 times. I have been on that land for 22 years. I've never seen the water flow like it flows now. I have kept a diary of all the concerns I've had since the day they started spilling to my land. Now, one of the biggest things is, in the beginning, I believe a retention pond is supposed to be built last, is the way I understand it. They built it first, so therefore sediment from the land that they totally have cleared, taken the trees off, taken the grass out, totally cleared it out. All of that sediment has washed into my pond. Now, neighbors noticed it, everybody was noticing it and saying, oh my gosh, Kay, what in the world? Their sediment turned a almost 30-acre pond into an orange cesspool of dirt. From the sediment, it's already caused problems with the grasses in my pond. Where I used to have an entire area of lotus, there's none. And that's because the sediment fogs the water, the sun's not able to get through. Because the sun can't get through, the plant life can't be fed. Now, when you take your plant life away from the pond, it also messes with the fish and all of the aquatic life inside that pond, because they depend on the grasses for aeration, for the little amoebas and the little creatures that grow around that for food and different things. Also, clams, mussels, things like that also grow within that stuff. So I'm already being affected. Now, also, my spillway, because it wasn't big enough to handle their flow, and it's doing its best, but I have pillars in my spillway to slow the flow so that the force isn't so strong, to kind of slow it down so that when it's going through the pathway to get to the dirt, to the slough, that it slows that down and helps with so that it won't erode my land. Okay, when their water's flowing through, it covers my pillars when we have these rains. Now, like I said, the neighborhood is barely built. They may have 20 acres or so flowing to me, I'm not sure. But there's gonna be 100+ acres all put through that retention pond sent to me. I can't handle it. I don't think I should have to handle it. I don't think my creatures, my wildlife, my plants, anything in this pond, it just seems 100% wrong that they have been given permission to run their waters through my pond. First off, it seems like trespass of water to me because of the way it's put together. So I would just like for y'all to please take all of this into consideration. There's so much more that I could tell you. The EPA laws, the endangered species laws, I've got them all. And I'm talking to people, higher powers, to help me with this. And I will go to my grave fighting it. I just wish that the city would please help protect us individuals, that these large companies and these large corporations that are gonna make millions of dollars off this subdivision, I just pray that y'all will help me with this and help me to stop them from contaminating my property. 100 years from now, when that subdivision's falling apart and the houses are 100 years old and it's not the beautiful place that it is today, my pond will still be receiving the contaminated water if it's not stopped now. Please help me, y'all. Please, I'm begging you. And I will come and speak to any of y'all individually. I'm willing to meet with the project managers and the owners, which I have done on several occasions. They have tried to remediate the problem with the sediment, but we're a long ways. The sediment is a small problem compared to what the big problem's gonna be years to come.
All right, thank you, Ms. Thompson. I think we have a question, Mr. Andrews.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you
Yes.
for coming. I have two questions. First of all, I hear you.
Thank you.
And I understand about the natural habitat that obviously you says. Is this pond a natural pond, or is this something someone built
It was built back in the 30s.
back in the 30s?
Yes, sir. It was Mr. Pollard and Horton. They owned the land at the time. And, you want me to tell you the story? Okay. The landowner next door wanted a pond, and he started building one. Then found out that he had built on someone else's land, which was the Pollard Horton land. When they found this out, they decided to just go ahead and continue the pond. Apparently they had large equipment and did that for a living, so they brought out their big earth movers and all their dozers, and the Horton and Pollard, I believe was their name, continued the pond and made it into a 30-acre or 26-acre pond. It wasn't until years later that the spillway was built, because it was causing problem to the landowner behind us, and they complained. So Pollard Horton died, the Garretts bought the land, which Garretts also owned the piece across that Providence is being built on. But the Garretts put in the spillway, and that was probably, I think it was 1945 when that happened.
The reason why I asked the question is because back in the 40s and the 50s, when the government started subsidizing the building of ponds, and they would help rural and country folk do it. Primarily those ponds were built in a natural drainage area so that the flow of water coming off the land would flow into that particular quote-unquote reservoir, and then it behooved the owner of that to design and prepare a spillway
Yes,
that
sir.
would function.
I don't believe that to be the case.
Can I finish?
Of course you can.
Okay. The only thing I'm saying is that at that time, that may have not been the case, but it sounds like the pond that you own is in a natural flow of water coming off in that direction. The question I have for you is, what would you have them do?
They either need to filter it to where it's not contaminated, so that they're not contaminating my pond and damaging our fish and our wildlife and our endangered species, or they need to do what other city subdivisions do, which is to build a drainage system that takes it straight to a slough, to where you're not worried about living creatures in a lake. I mean, I'm not the expert on this, but I know that it's been done many, many times. There's other states that are having problem with runoff into big places like Chesapeake Bay. I mean, just fertilizers alone cause an algae growth that is starting. They warn people for 48 hours after a large runoff or a major rain not to swim in these waterways, because there's brain-eating amoebas that end up developing from things like fertilizers in yards. I mean, it's causing big problems in large bodies of water. So to think that it wouldn't cause a major problem to my land and basically turn it into a sewage pit is, it's gonna happen
Thank you
unless
for
it is
ans- Thank
filtered.
you for answering my question.
Okay.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, I'm very familiar with the area that you're talking about,
Yes.
because the airport and all of that used to be back
Yes,
up
I'm-
in there. But Phase 1, beautiful subdivision, and I'm just wondering, I heard you say you talked with the head. The city engineer said no. Why did he say no?
The city engineer,
You
I
s-
don't know. Now, I did talk to David Alexander, I've talked to
Yes.
Jason, I've talked to their engineer, which is out of Chicago.
Okay.
He flew down and I met with them on January 17th, just to try to understand how are you draining this water. I know he did make some adjustments, but it wasn't to correct the pollution. I think it just retains some of the water. But you know, once the bowl's full, it's full. It can only hold so much, and then it has to spill. And the spill is enormous. I'm telling you, I don't know anyone that could afford to take on that drain that they have.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Thompson? Mr. Clark?
I guess we could make just one minor comment, Madam Chair, is that the problems that she's sharing with you are the concerns of the engineering department. And I think that they are reviewing all of the concerns that she has. At worst case scenario, we can have them come to share with you what will be done to combat her problem, but just for factual references, this is not something that the MPC is responsible for.
All right, well, so we're here today the application is to subdivide. Is that correct?
That's all we're doing is that all of this has already been approved, and you're just approving the subdivision.
So our approval or disapproval of the subdivision, what kind of an impact would that have on the progress of the drainage problem?
Probably little to none. I mean, we can have the engineering department come down and share that with you, but this would be a hindrance to their ability to subdivide and develop their property. Because they're going to address the drainage problems and the retention and detention problems.
You're confident that they are? How are you?
We strongly believe that they will. That is what their charge is.
Is
May I
that-
ask?
And they're responsible for that. I mean, that's their,
Now,
yeah,
they,
That's not something that,
the parish has to be sure that it doesn't harm anyone else, just the same way that the MPC looks out for, to be sure that the business or whatever the zoning changer would be a nuisance to someone else, but that's, well, the engineering department has to review everything.
so it looks like this is on the border of the city and is your land in the parish or city or combination?
okay, I think what just happened, and I'm not the expert, but I think the city just annexed that property in. So I guess the road is our divider. I'm parish, they're directly across the street, they're city. But this was done recently.
And this has been reviewed, Madam Chair, by both the parish engineer and the city engineer.
It has already been
It
reviewed?
has already been
And
reviewed.
what is their conclusion?
They allowed for the detention basin to be constructed. They have been made aware of this issue. And they have sent personnel out there. We've invited them to come today, but they had a conflict in their schedules and could not make it.
So if you have any concerns, we can have them come to your next meeting, but they are reviewing this, they have reviewed this process.
Did they issue a report, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know of any formal report now.
Mr. Elderson?
Ms. Thompson?
Yes, sir.
Question, looking at the aerial, the pond, there's a pond to the north of your pond, is that correct?
There, about 8 years ago, a neighbor did build another pond that trespasses its water also onto my land.
That's what I was wondering, if there's
Yes,
any
sir.
negative effect from that pond.
Oh, yes. That's another thing I have to address. It's like, there needs to be some laws put in place on people building ponds, or, you know, because I remember just putting in a septic system. I had to go through, heck, it took me 2 months just to get approval to get a septic system. But yet this new neighborhood, Providence, has built some kind of septic system that from the facing their subdivision from my land, on the right side, they're sending their septic water to me. On the left side, they're sending their contaminated runoff from the whole entire property to me. So I'm getting it from both sides, straight to my lake.
Thanks.
I don't know what to do. I need help.
Any other questions from Ms. Thompson?
Ma'am, ma'am, do you understand what they were just saying? That actually here we're supposed to just confirm or not the zoning that we trust our engineers to go ahead, and if they allow this to happen, they're supposed to take all the measurements against you getting, all the.
I do hear what they said, sir, and I feel like they didn't think twice about me. They thought they saw that body of water and they said, jackpot. That's what I think. No one came to me and discussed it with me if it was okay with me to run it through my spillway, through the back of my land. It erodes my land. The water has been so high that it came up on my land like I've never seen ever. It covered up a whole grove of trees, which right now they're still laying down, and I have all the pictures to prove where
So
the water
the city
went.
engineers
The
have never
trees
been
have
there?
fallen because the root system couldn't handle the wetness of the water, of the land from that water.
Sorry, so the city engineers have not contacted you, or no one from the city has been there to talk to you at all?
No, sir. Now, the only thing that I have seen, I was on vacation after Christmas and up until around the 6th or 7th, 8th, something like that of January of last year. They had an MPC meeting while I was gone. And I didn't know that it was happening. It could have been just because I didn't open that mail. It was Christmas. It was during the busiest time for me. And plus, we were on a ski trip. So I wasn't able to be at that MPC meeting. But I was in contact with these guys, talking to them before I went on the ski trip. They didn't mention an MPC meeting either, and I can understand why they didn't. They probably didn't want me here because I'm the one that's been, affected. No one else is. Now, if there was a subdivision across the street, the whole subdivision would be affected. But right now, it's just me because we own the 125 acres that they're sending all this water through.
I have a question for our support team. So if, let's say, it gets approved, the city is supposed to send all the team and do all the research that they're supposed to do and make sure that everything is fine, right?
That is the responsibility of the engineer.
Mr. Paul, may I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Phase 1 is there, right? This is phase 2 we're talking
Think so.
about. Okay, and phase 1 been there for quite some time. Now we're talking about phase 2. Okay, so no one had talked to you when phase 1 was.
Well, phase 1 didn't affect me, ma'am,
It's just affecting you now.
because it's on Southern Loop.
Okay, I heard you say about
Phase
your.
2 is on Wallace Lake Road, so it's a L.
Okay.
like that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
You've answered.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Thompson? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to me, I appreciate it.
Feedback.
Y'all have my phone number, if anyone would love to contact me, I would
Okay.
love to talk to them. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Is there anyone else here today to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, is there anyone with the applicant who would care to come back for rebuttal?
Justin Sevier, 1922 Chestnut Park Lane, Shreveport, 71106. So yes, we have, we certainly respect Ms. Thompson. We've been in contact with her since probably late last year. She's been in contact with David Alexander in our office. And we've met with her numerous times, and we actually hired our engineer to come back from Chicago. He's actually from the 4 cities, the Tri-Cities up there.
What's his name?
Mike Shamsey. It's Landmark Engineering. So he came back and checked everything, double-checked all the calculations, and with respect to Ms. Thompson, we actually decided as a development group to go above and beyond, and we actually dug out the pond even farther and put in some additional controls. I can ask my counterpart here, but I'm pretty sure that it was north of $40,000 that we spent in addition just to take those calculations from the required calculations to a percentage above those. There are laws and regulations in place for this kind of stuff between, federal regulations from DEQ, the parish and city, and I assure you that when all this came up, we went back to all of them and just said, look, if there's a regulation we're not meeting, please let us know. We want to be good neighbors. She has a beautiful piece of property, so does the neighbor to her north. We feel like we've gone above and beyond to ensure that we are slowing the runoff above, again, the allowable amount. So what an engineer does in the beginning is he calculates runoff for existing property without development, and then he calculates runoff with development, and it gives you an allowable factor, and those factors are set by the parish and the city and the state that we have to meet with paved surfaces, unpaved, all that. And we met those regulations initially. Those were all part of the original plans to develop the neighborhood. And so those all were approved and went through. And then, again, we went back and some as much as 40%, we were in several areas, we were below the allowable flow from our development into the roadside ditch along Wallace Lake Road by 40%. So, our retention pond discharges into the roadside ditch, which is a parish ditch, and then the culverts that water goes through take the water under Wallace Lake Road and go towards our property. Those have been there for 27 years, 29 years. So those were there for a very long time before we got there. So,
And I'm just gonna, your time has expired.
Oh, yeah,
I was
sure.
just gonna ask quickly, is this something that is this an ongoing project that y'all have to look into this, or have y'all
Sure.
do y'all consider yourself to have concluded this
So
remediation?
I feel like when we went above and beyond the first time, we felt like that was a good gesture. But again, if the city or the parish comes back and tells us that something that our project is doing doesn't meet some type of a guideline or regulation, then we're certainly we're open to fixing or changing something on our end. That
Would your engineer be willing to meet with Ms. Thompson or
He-
her
Sure.
engineer,
Yeah.
even if the city or parish didn't initiate it?
Yes, they've met once before, and we've actually sent all of our calculations to Mrs. Thompson once before. So she had all those calculations 6 or 8 months ago. So
Okay, any questions, Mr.
We just
Clark?
had one additional question as to whether or not you've been in consultation with the city engineer, and what information have they provided you about this problem?
yeah, so all of those calculations we have sent to them in the past, and we sent those again on Monday of this week, and just said, look, if there's anything else we need to provide, please let us know. But our engineer, Mike Shamsey with Landmark, spoke directly to several people in the engineering department, and there was nothing else required. They had all the information that they needed, and so as far as we know, everything, all the information we've gotten from them has been that we're meeting the
And one last
guideline.
question.
Sure.
The timeline that y'all are operating on, would it be an inconvenience if this application was referred for deferral to allow the city engineer to meet with your engineer and work out these problems before they approve the subdivision?
It would, just because we have certain deadlines that we're trying to meet, and again, if we need to do something, we're simply just getting this approval so we can continue with plat formation and recording of that. So a delay today would affect us in a negative way, would delay the start from early spring, which is what we're planning on. But we still have to submit our engineering documents for phase 2 for the actual construction. And so that's where all those calculations lie. Anything to do with drainage, retention, all that is in those calculations. And so that is another point in time in which the engineers have to raise their hand and ask for more info or allow, require something else of us. And again, we want to be great neighbors, and we develop a lot of property, and so we're happy to do anything that we are required to do. So, and more. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Severe. Any other questions? No. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, board,
Madam Chair, motion to approve.
Second.
a motion to approve by Mr. Andrews and a second by Ms. Smith. Any discussion? Mr. Clark?
And one last thing, Madam Chair, for the assurance of the neighbor that has the concerns. The plats are signed by the city engineer, so they still will have time to review all these calculations and any concerns that she have. They still will have time to address those concerns. So, I mean, she's not being abandoned if you're so inclined to approve the subdivision.
Just a quick question. Before the city engineers make the final decision, can she go ahead and ask for extra requirements somewhere that are not just part of that are not just part of the law, but something that she will require extra?
She can request whatever she's so inclined to request through the city engineer, but the likelihood may not be very great that they would do something that the law does not require them to do. They will ensure that negative impacts on our property are mitigated, and that's what they do. It's their charge.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the subdivision, which is all that is before us today. Any other discussion? We'll call for the vote.
Mr. Andrew, you vote?
And the motion is approved. But I would encourage you to continue. I don't know that this was necessarily the forum that would be the most practical for the problem at issue. But I just would always encourage the community to have close discussions with the developers. Okay, the next case is case number 19425C. It's a zoning request. The applicant is Mr. Sanders, Alonzo Sanders. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, it's Alonzo
Welcome.
Sanders. How you doing? Alonzo Sanders, 1019 Pickett Street, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. I want to start with addressing some legal issues about the situation. When I first bought this land, it was commercial. That's the reason why I bought it. And it got changed, of course, I guess due to the UDC or whatever. Not too familiar with the process, but I'm getting more familiar with the process of having to get it rezoned. So I guess one of my things is that I didn't have to go to the process to get it unzoned or whatever you would call it, downsized or whatnot. But I do know the business that I'm building is not going to increase a certain amount of traffic in that area. The entrance to my building runs down a dead-end street. There's no other properties in that entire area, or businesses, or people on my side of the street, Pickett, Baker. It's all undeveloped land, and I think that Shreveport, or per se my particular part that I've purchased, needs economic enliftment. My business will contribute to that. In order to mend some of the ills in the past, we must actually take action for the future, and this is what I'm trying to do right now. This isn't just a business that I'm building to make money. It's something that I'm doing for my family, my future family generations. I believe this building will be in our hands as long as I continue to teach my children and my grandchildren some of the morals that I have. We led in prayer when I first came here, so I understand that this government believes in certain morale. And I would like to also say that I have some other people here that believe the same thing, some of the workers who work with me, but besides from some of the legal issues, I wanted to just speak on my personal feelings about the situation and kind of explain the reason why I wanted to build this building in this area, which is actually an opportunity zone, which when I bought it and purchased it, I didn't know that. So it was a reason to myself, the reason why I bought it. So some of the things, we got to look at the policies that prevail that disallow or may at least discourage most people in a vulnerable or impoverished area from building, which is some of the legal or obstacles that we feel we have to climb that may keep us from actually building, or at least trying to, because this right here has kind of been a hardship on me, just the process or whatnot, and I felt like I wanted to actually just leave Shreveport and do it somewhere else. But after careful thought about the situation and constantly deliberating with myself, I told myself I need to stay here and do this because I have a lot of friends here. I have a lot of families here. I've been here for over 20 years, and I definitely believe that my business is going to help other families, especially the people who I hire, the people who are with me, and things like that. So just kind of going back to my personal issues, I feel that the structural inequities of Shreveport culture that's been reproducing a pathology of poverty in certain neighborhoods, that for the next generation, if the people of this board believe in me, other people like me, give us and allow us to build the buildings, the businesses that we desire in our hearts. Of course, the building that I'm building is not like it's a sin business or alcohol or something that will actually, I can't say that it will hurt the community because it's allowed in certain areas, but my prayer beliefs, I don't believe in certain things like that personally. So I want to say that I'm a part of the future of Shreveport businesses, and in my opinion, we should be promoting progressive politics piercing through poverty by not only cultivating but creating commerce and business. And I do see multi-story buildings in other areas being built. I just passed by Line and Ellaby Road. I see a multi-story being built over there. One was built 2-3 years ago, right across the street. And I'm not really too familiar with that class, whether it's lower class area, middle class, or upper class area. But the area where I'm from, which is Hollywood, Cedar Grove, Lakeside, those areas, I don't see any multi-story buildings being built. As a matter of fact, too many new businesses. Y'all may be more familiar with it because y'all are doing this each and every day, but personally, I just haven't seen any. So when we're talking about Pickett Street, it's more closer to the Hollywood area, Lakeside areas within its development because it has nothing there. But you can go just maybe 2 blocks over and the buildings start off at $500,000, go all the way to upwards of $50 million like the Regent's Tower. So I'm not saying what my building is going to do for the area, but I'm saying that it will be a start, and that this is just not a business that I'm building to make money, but actually to help people, not only in my circle, but anyone who comes and who wants to work. So that's basically the closing of everything I had to say. I had a few other legal issues, but at this particular time, I don't feel like I just want to address them all. I don't think I have anyone here opposing me. And I feel like the board of directors is going to approve this in my heart for some reason.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Okay.
Anyone want to question Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm very familiar with that area, and I do drive through there and I see a store
Yes, ma'am.
in that area, but it used to be just residential houses back in there. But I heard you say that some people that work with you, what kind of work are you doing now?
Well, right now I have a lot of real estate properties, and we work on my homes. particularly if I'm buying a new investment property. We do remodeling and things like that of that nature. But also my rental properties, which, just saying, for instance, going to them and keeping them updated, or if one of the tenants have a problem, something like that.
But not business like what you're talking about?
No, the business what I'm
Okay,
talking about
that's
is
what I
actually
was
going to be
searching for.
a used car dealership. Is
Exactly.
what I'm talking about. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Sanders? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate
Okay.
you being here. Anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Hey there, welcome.
Hi. Can this thing hear me? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say
Start off with your name and an address for me.
My name is Edward Jackson. I'm at 541 East Stoner. Okay. Long story short, I like what he's doing because he's not only employed me, but employed some of my friends with jobs, especially when they need it in hard times. I think that he could not only help myself, but just like how he was saying, help others that's in my situation come up out of poverty and actually have something in life. So my feedback, I hope y'all approve of it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Wait, is there any more questions for Mr. Jackson? Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor of this application?
Hello, my name's Adam Rumbo.
Sorry, say it again.
My name's Adam Rumbo,
Okay.
and I stay at
Welcome.
3128 Abbey Street, Shreveport, Louisiana, 711, I think 05, I believe. But I met Mr. Sanders about 3 years ago, and I've been with him every day since then. And personally, I learned so much from him. He showed me how to just a better way of expressing myself, living. He helped me exactly when I was down, and his building will continuously keep us working, me and my family. And I just had a newborn, and he looked just like me.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I just want him to grow up and be happy, and teach him the same things that Mr. Sanders taught me, because I lost my father early, and I know me and him about the same age. So, and I just like his vision. So I wish all of you would approve this, because we really do need it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rainbow. Any questions? All right. One more to speak in favor.
How you doing? My name is Amos Henderson. I'm from 58.
Can you repeat your name, please?
Amos Henderson.
Mr. Henderson, welcome.
I'm from 58, 15 West 58th Street. And I just want to say that he's helped me do a lot in my life. And he's constantly kept me with employment. And I'm just for his building.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Henderson? You're good. Thanks. Anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? All right. Anyone here to speak in opposition?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
before the opposition starts, I just would like to once again reiterate the fact that today we're here to determine whether or not to recommend the zoning be reinstated from RUC to C3, and not for the special use permit for the used car sales.
Yes, correct. There's nothing before the board today about the use of the property. It's just to reinstate zoning that was
Right.
changed due to the UDC's implementation, which is something that for a certain window of time is given by right. So, welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Harris. I'm here from the City Attorney's Office. The purpose of me being here today is because of the legal issues that were raised in the application. Mr. Sanders alleged some constitutional violations of the city. And briefly to address those, he refers to the due process clause, the takings clause, and a violation of the equal protection of the 14th Amendment. And just wanted to provide to you just a brief outline of those issues in review of his application and whether or not you approve the rezoning. He's alleging that in the takings clause that the amendment deprived him of his life, his property, and did not provide him notice. However, when he just stood here today, he said that when he first purchased the land, it was zoned for commercial at the time.
And Ms. Harris, are you, let me just clarify, sorry, there's some confusion. Are you speaking in favor of or in opposition to this application, or?
I am here to support the decision of Mr. Clark if he is in opposition to it, but the purpose of me being here today is because of the constitutional violations, which are also a part of his application.
Okay, and I'm not sure if this would, if you,
If
if
we
this-
had- we
right
would-
now, we're trying to hear from people who are opposed to the rezoning itself.
Okay.
There might, is this an appropriate time to get into the constitutional?
The city attorney's office is very interested in whenever a citizen
Right.
challenges the legality of any actions being taken on behalf of the city of Shreveport.
Yes, sir.
And she wanted to make you aware, as did the MPC attorney, Mr. John, wanted to make you aware of those legalities and those constitutional requirements.
Yes, sir.
Just for-
Right now, our board is under the impression that the city attorney's office is opposed to the application. So
And
that's
they're not- they're
right.
not.
And so this is a little, in
It's
that
just information.
context, I think it might be just out of order.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
If I may, I'd like to suspend the rules and allow her to put her statement on the record, and then we go back into
Okay.
the normal session, just so where everyone's clear that she's simply responding to some of the language that was
Okay.
in the application.
Second
Okay. All right, a motion to suspend by Mr. Remedies, second by Mr. Andrews. Any call for the vote?
Okay, thank you. In the application, it states that Mr. Sanders is alleging that he has been deprived of his life, his liberty, and property as provided for under the due process clause. Unfortunately, that does not apply here. In order for a taking to occur, it has to be a regulatory taking. And that's when the government leaves no reasonable economically viable use of the property. And there are case law here to support the position that only when a regulatory taking has occurred, that person has been deprived of all viable use. It does not state that just because he's not allowed to construct the type of building or business that he so desires on this property, that we have violated any constitutional violation. And further, he also alleges that he has been discriminated against under the equal protection of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which also does not apply in his application. That amendment only applies if the states are discriminating between a certain class of citizens. He did not specify any type of classification as to how the city will be discriminatory in their decision today of this board if they choose to deny his application to rezone that property. There are no other applicants that have came forward in that area to say that they have been treated differently by any decisions of the board, and that is the position of our office today.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Harris? Anyone?
Good to see you, Councilman.
All right, now, is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to the current application?
We
and
didn't
the
go back
first-
to the regular session. Motion to
Oh.
go back to the regular.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Do we need to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to return to regular session is approved. We are back in regular session, and the first speaker in opposition, if we have any, will be given 10 minutes.
I think I've been elected the loyal opposition.
Welcome.
I did not realize
Jane.
that I
Thank
had
you.
been, but I believe that I have. Liz Swain, 416 Cotton Street, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. I'm here today representing both the Downtown Development Authority, the Downtown Shreveport Development Corporation, and myself as a property owner of 2 buildings less than 2 blocks away from the location that we're speaking of now. Folks, you know this as much as I do. Over the years, there have been many decisions made for and about downtown that we are now trying to deal with. It is absolutely hard for us as human beings to look at an area of town, in this case, a historic neighborhood that is currently mostly empty and some would consider to be blighted, and see it as anything other than empty or blighted. There are a lot of people who would say anything in an area like this is better than nothing. I absolutely and so strongly disagree with that. That is so far from the truth, and it can be devastating. Devastating to this neighborhood, hurtful to our downtown and to our community. What you do today, what your decision is today, will definitely and significantly impact the future of this neighborhood. There is no way it cannot. This part of downtown is called the Old Blue Goose neighborhood. Miss Bessie is certainly familiar with it.
Yes, I am.
Absolutely. It is valuable property. You're thinking to yourself, Liz, I have seen that property. No, it's not valuable property. It's underutilized, it's unused, and it's somewhat forgotten. But folks, this property is a stone's throw from the Central Business District, from the new Shreveport Common, from the new Caddo Common that was just opened this past neighborhood. It is one of the main entrances of our beautiful and historic downtown. It has gorgeous topography, rolling hills, 100-year-old oak trees. It was a vibrant neighborhood. It has an incredibly rich history. When you look at it today, there's not a lot there. There are a few residences. There is one very much loved restaurant, and we're going to be hearing from her in a moment. But all around it, a stone's throw away from this location, things are happening. People are buying historic buildings and rehabbing them. They are investing money. They are improving quality of life for our entire community. Mr. Sanders initially pulled a permit for his property to build a residence. We would encourage that. That is the correct use for this area, for this neighborhood, for this piece of property. We would encourage him to finish it, to live there, to be a part of this, what we hope to see as a newly burgeoning Blue Goose. But he now wishes to rezone his property to C3 for a used car dealership with outdoor vehicle display. I understand that that is not what you are deciding today, but changing it back to C3 would set the course for this neighborhood, and it is not a course that I believe that we should take. MPC staff has told me that Mr. Sanders will need a special use permit to do his used car dealership, and that we should not worry. I am worried. I've got to admit to you that I am worried. Whether or not, though, Mr. Sanders is allowed his special use permit for a used car dealership, just the rezoning to C3 will allow him to do things that we do not believe are what this neighborhood needs. He could do things like build a gas station, a payday loan business, an enclosed vehicle dealership, a vehicle repair business. None of these types of uses belong in the middle of a neighborhood. None of these belong in the middle of a neighborhood. Certainly not in the middle of a neighborhood that is struggling today, but that one day, depending on what you do today, will be a place that people want to be, want to live, want to have businesses, want to invest in, but only if we can protect it. You know, I heard the city attorney's information, and I swear to you, it sounded like she was on our side. Everything that she said sounded like it backed up our contention that our belief that the UDC was enacted to correct many of the problems and omissions of the past. I ask you to help in protecting this neighborhood, setting the course for this neighborhood, and denying the zoning request today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swain. Anyone Anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I strongly agree with you. I know what's before us today, but if we vote, then the next thing I know what would happen in that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Well, we do have a long-term plan for the city, right? For the long-term planning,
You have the master plan.
the master planning, and that calls for this area to be residential, right?
That's what
Yes,
the master plan calls.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition? You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi. Hello. I'm Agatha
Welcome.
Fertitta McCall, 1124 Fairfield Avenue, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. Well, I'm the owner of Fertitta's Deli. And I've been there since, well, I've been there 70 years because I grew up there. And the building has been there since 1927. We're on the historic registry. And it is a historic area. It's a beautiful area of the city, and it is a shame that it's not developed. A lot of that is caused because it is adjudicated property, and the city's made it very difficult to purchase adjudicated property, which I have done in the past behind my building. I purchased 3 lots under because they were adjudicated. The development of that area needs to be kept historic looking and historic, not even because, especially because it is off, you can see it off the interstate. And we get so many people, I can't even begin to tell you how many people who come into Shreveport off of I-20, and as soon as they get into I-20, they'll Google a place to eat. And we come up first because we're right there in that, right off the interstate. So we get people from Texas going, and we get people from Alabama, Mississippi every day. It's not just occasionally. And it's amazing. And I think it's because we are in an area that is historic, that is a nice area. I know it's a lot of need down there. It's been unkept for a long time. But we have kept our building up. We've tried to keep it looking very, nice. And I spoke with Mr. Thrash, who owns Thrash Construction, and he purchased an antique, it was a church, and that building has been there since the 20s. And he completely redeveloped it and redid all of his property to make it's beautiful. And there again, he took an old historic area and revitalized that building and made it beautiful. And my concerns are that the street that Mr. Sanders is wanting to come off of Pickett, there is no street there any longer. It's just it's just a path that has been made from vehicles going up and down it. So if he wanted to develop that and make it very nice and make it appealing, because he's going to have the way to his business would have to be off of Fairfield, because there's no way off of I-20, even though you can see the property from I-20, but there's no access from I-20 to there. So he would have to, I would want to see a paved road and for it to be developed nicely so that when people come down Fairfield, then they would see a nicely developed area, not just a dirt road that has been caused from vehicles going up and down those dirt roads. That's not developing it. That's just making a path. And I'd like to see that changed if he's, and it has been a residential area. My grandfather owned houses down there. He had over 33 houses at one time. And there were, and as a child growing up, I remember a lot of our customers that rented from him. And of course, through the years, all that has changed. Am I out of time?
Sorry, yes, I didn't
Okay,
want
I could go on and on and on.
These are great stories. We'd love to hear them all. Is anyone here, does anyone have any questions?
Ma'am, I've been there personally. I love the food. And
Thank you.
But so you're not opposed to other kind of businesses, like another restaurant or like other businesses that are
Right. I'm not opposed to
engaging
that.
with that kind of neighborhood. right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In fact, my son years ago had a very beautiful vision. He said, Mom, he said, of course, we're Sicilian descent. And he said, if you'll look at the way in Sicily, the hills and the ways things, look there, and that area looks like it could be a part of Sicily, and it's beautiful. And if it was developed in fact, I tried to talk to Mr. Coleman, Link Coleman, because he eats with me every Thursday. And I told him, I said, you ought to purchase this land and you ought to develop it, because it would just be absolutely beautiful. And that's my vision. I'd like to see that happening. I'd like to see the heart of the city come to life again. And my grandfather always called that the heart of Shreveport, and it was back in the 20s. So, I'm sorry. Like I said, I could go on and on. And I'm very passionate about my place of business. Like I said, I have owned it 40 years, but I was raised there, so I've been there 70. So, and that's telling my age.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, any other questions from Ms. Martinez? No? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Hello, Jason Brown, 975 Texas Avenue, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71104. I'm a property owner just about 3 blocks away from this area. And I want to start out by saying that, I hate to be opposed to Mr. Sanders. I agree with what he's saying, but I was like many property owners in Shreveport. When the UDC was announced, I went to all the meetings. I was the voice of opposition against all this. I'm not a big fan of a government controlling what you can do with your property. But they had a master plan. And there was so much time and effort and money spent on this plan and the UDC. And it was for furtherance of Shreveport, to create an environment, a community where our children don't want to leave and we attract other children from states to come here. That's the whole purpose. And even though I'm against it, I'm going with what the majority of people in Shreveport wanted, and that is this kind of development. And yes, it affected me just as much as it affects Mr. Sanders. I'm being controlled on what I can do with my property, but it's that appropriateness that is a good thing. And a used car lot is not what was envisioned in this neighborhood, this historic neighborhood that I, like many people, have an interest in seeing developed. I would love to be a part of that development, but I think putting a used car lot there will inhibit that development. It will benefit Mr. Sanders, but listening to Mr. Sanders talk, it would seem to me that he has a lot of property around Shreveport, a lot of other places that it sounds like could be an appropriate place for a used car lot. I think that utilizing this property in this area the way it was intended, based upon the master plan, based upon the consensus of our community on how to develop our city to make it a more inviting place, is important. Even though it negatively affected me just as much as Mr. Sanders, I'm willing to abide by that. And that's why I'm standing with my neighbors, the McCalls, and Ms. Swain, and Mr. Thrash. We need to protect our neighborhoods. And by voting in favor of this, just the zoning change is that step. It's a step in a direction that's going to allow him ultimately to do with what he wants, which is what everyone was against, and that is putting a used car lot in this historic neighborhood right on the outskirts, the entrance of our city. Thank you.
Again, you wouldn't be opposed to a different zoning? Like
No.
C1, like a light commercial? for
Yes.
example.
I mean, I go to Fertitas all the time as well. I think there are businesses. And look, on a side note also, I'm with the Shreveport rugby team. And we have been in discussions with the city of Shreveport about developing Princess Park and doing a field there, having something positive for the community, having a place where children can come and practice and play and learn skills, having something inviting. And, frankly, a used car lot's not part of that vision. I think a house is, or some other type of business would be, Mr. Roca. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? All right, thank you.
It's
very
good
much.
seeing everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Do I put this thing I filled out earlier in the basket here?
Yes, and just
Okay.
tell us your name and address.
Name is Winston Conway Link, L-I-N-K. And my residence is 8663 Grover Place, 71115. But I also have a connection with downtown, an older building downtown, in fact, one of the oldest ones in downtown, which is at 206 Milam Street. So I've got an interest, a lot of it which is brought up by what Ms. Swain said. And that is, if things were done correctly within just 2 or 3, 4 blocks from downtown, including my own building, you could have a walking tour of nearby restaurants. One would be Mangiuni's, one would be Jacqueline's. You have Agatha's, you have Cotton Bowl, and then Jason, of course, is not very far. Jason Brown is not very far from any of this. I have to congratulate Thad Thrash on his taking over of a building which was an absolutely horrible. I mean, if you've seen it 4 or 5 years ago, you know this building, which is a Baptist church at one time, was in wretched condition. And he has turned it into a very, very nice structure. And I want to thank Thad, even though he's not here. I've got a few notes here. I want to mention that. And how much time do I have, first of all?
You have another minute and 48 seconds.
Okay. Agatha and her husband have used that building not only as an eatery over the years, but they've also allowed people who had historic preservation interest to have meetings there. The Shreveport Waterworks Museum was one of them. Shreveport Historic Preservation Society was one. The Red River Valley Railroad Historical Society is another one. We've met there. Agatha is one of our board members. And so many people that have involved or interested in historic preservation have met there over and over and over again for years. Agatha was kind enough to allow us to have our Wallace Lake Plane Crash Forum, which was in January the 10th of 2014, as well as an Italian Sicilian restaurant forum there, and that was a couple of years ago. So they have been very helpful, very kind in donating their time and their restaurant, their space for us to have meetings. Now, Liz said one thing about, or several people said one thing about car lots. I don't know if you've been on, I guess, 70th Street. Did a little tour today, and I had my driver, my assistant, and I was taking notes. And between Line Avenue and a little bit west of Linwood, I counted over 14 used car lots. 14 used car lots, plus businesses that are associated with used cars. For instance, car wash places, transmission shops, tire shops, parts departments, and all kind of cars out in the way. And I don't think this is something that, as the other people who have signed in before me, want to see in a very, very close to downtown residential neighborhood. So I'm opposed to this, although I have to admit that I have Mr. Sanders. He's had some good ideas. Would like to see him move in there rather than open up a car lot.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. The time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Link, Mr. Roca?
Yeah, just a quick question. So you mentioned there's several groups that meet there, that they get together to talk about the historical, the historical part of the neighborhood. Has Mr. Sanders been part of these meetings at all?
Has Mr. Sanders been what?
Has he been invited, or has he?
No, I didn't know Mr. Sanders. I just saw him just a few minutes ago for the first time.
Okay, so he has never been part of these meetings with the historical, or with all the meetings?
Not as far as I know.
Okay.
But there's several people besides myself. I'm not the only one that meets there in that group. You have Gary Joyner and Ernie Robertson and some others who have met there on a fairly regular basis, and they don't invite me. I don't get every invitation. But thank you for thinking that I probably did. No, I don't.
I was just trying to figure out if he has tried to reach these groups to talk to them about the history.
Not that. You'd have to ask Mr. Sanders. I don't know. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. anyone else here to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Sanders, you're welcome to return to the podium. You have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Alonzo Sanders, 1019 Pickett Street, Shreveport, Louisiana. Everyone up here spoke fluently about their opposition. I understand it. However, I've heard no legal reasons why this building shouldn't be built except for their feelings about it, keeping it a historic district. Of course, I understand they're getting older and they want to preserve what they're holding on to, memories, different things of that nature. But the future is coming. I am the future. I really feel that way. And whatever process that I have to go through, I'm going to keep on going. None of these people who came up here and spoke own any property over there. Respect to Ms. Fertitas, she's not on Baker, she's not on Pickett, she's down the way. I understand that. I can definitely understand her concern. The rest, I don't know where they live, but I can guarantee you it's nowhere near Pickett Street. You have places that's blocks away. Where are these blocks away? What's the address? I didn't actually hear that. Once again, I understand your concern about the area, but I own the property. I've invested my money in this property. I'm already developing in this property. I didn't come into this as residential. I came into this as business. I was forced to go residential because I already brought the property previously to me doing this. I went before to fill out the site plan application, everything for business, right in that period of time, which I still have all the previous paperwork and everything that I filed. I've held on to that. So I went business, not residential. I felt that I had to build something residential because I couldn't build anything business until I actually read in the news article about how y'all were basically given the opportunity to have it back zoned for free. And I would have paid for it if I would have had to anyway, but that's not the case. Just saying that after I read that in a newspaper article, just doing a little research, then I filed the application to have it rezoned. So it was my ignorance that kept me from doing this ahead of time. So once again, I've heard no legal reasons except for people who don't want to see it done because of their feelings, which I understand are the matter, or how they would feel once again. But my personal feelings is I'm trying to do something for the future of Shreveport. I can't explain it to everybody. I don't expect everybody to understand. I understand. I'm going to continue this path, whatever the path I have to take, whether it be appeal, going to district court, going to federal court. It's in my heart. Not trying to make any enemies with anybody. I heard Ms. Snow say she strongly disagrees. I don't know if she has a friendship with her or how that would work, but I would like to say this right here, that whether it gets approved or denied, I'm going to appeal. I'm going to go to district court, going to go to federal court. I will exhaust every remedy that's applicable to me until I can. And speaking of the city attorney, what she has said, that is true in state court, but in federal is different. So, and that's why I actually plan on taking this case. But of course I have to exhaust it through the district court after the appeal, which I will do. But hopefully I don't have to. I ask that the board approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Anybody want to question Mr. Sanders? Okay. All right. Before any discussion, is there a motion?
Motion to reject.
Second.
So a motion to deny the application by Mr. Roca and a second by Ms. Smith. As for discussion, I believe in Mr. Clark or anyone on the board, correct me if I'm wrong, there has been an agreement on the record by our board that anyone whose zoning was changed because of the UDC will have until this August to back zone or down, or whatever the term you want to use, without having to pay for that application. They'll be able to do it by right. We have consistently voted to allow that, including with some high-profile families in town. The Praters, the High Towers, they wanted to rezone back to industrial. We approved it by right because that's what they were zoned before the change. So I want to point that out to y'all in terms of consistency with our board. And we are not voting on a right of use, on a special use. We're not voting on a car dealership. So that is my input on the discussion.
Okay, we're ready to vote.
You're absolutely right, Madam Chair. you as a board, because of concerns, for lack of a milder term, from, excuse me, from property owners, that properties were changed, are down zone. You did develop the policy that you would allow citizens to come in and request that their property be restored to the zoning that it was prior to the UDC and the map changes. You do have the option, although you have not done it thus far, but you do have this option to not restore the property. I just share with you that throughout the 2-year process, to my knowledge, and I may be incorrectly, but to my knowledge, you have not refused a property owner's right to restore their zoning back to its original zoning classification.
No, my understanding is that is correct, and I was not super happy about that decision to allow the back zoning. I agree with everything our opposing speakers have said. I agree with the UDC. I think we made the changes in the UDC for a reason, but our board determined otherwise for people who felt like they didn't have enough notice or that their property was swiped out from underneath them because of the UDC. So we agreed as a board for a temporary time frame, a window of time, to allow this, and we have never voted otherwise during this window, which ends in August, correct?
That's correct.
So I think for the record, it's important to put that on the table. So we have a motion to deny Mr. Sanders' application by Ms. Smith and a second by, a motion by Mr. Roca and a second by Ms. Smith. So a vote of yes will be to deny the application. A vote of no would be to deny the motion.
I have one more question. Walk me through this, Mr. Director. So, hypothetically speaking,
I'm sorry.
Bless you. No problem. Hypothetically speaking, the zoning request gets approved, right? Correct. He then needs to come back on the special use before this very body. Is that correct?
He would come back to you with an application. He would have to file an application for the special use permit and then come back before you, and that application would have to be approved.
But this, I mean, can I say something? Can I say something?
Yes, Mr. Roca.
But my understanding is that C3 includes some of the,
Right.
commerces that he could, then he doesn't have to.
Some of the things that Ms. Swain pointed out.
Right.
Any other discussion, Mr. Reeves?
I really am torn because I've probably been one of the biggest proponents of people paying X dollars, regardless of what he paid for it. But I've made the argument that you pay X dollars for property and then it's reverted, and then maybe for what you desired, your desired use was, it becomes useless to you. But on the other hand, I agree with picking a direction and for the city and going with it, but it's kind of left us in
A quagmire.
yeah, and I didn't know. I guess the question would be for Mr. John, if
He's over there.
He's back there.
Oh, okay.
From a legal standpoint, I guess in your experience in court, if a precedent had been set for us to return the rights, regardless of how we feel about this project, of what his end use would be, but if this gentleman takes the case to court and says, look, here's 30 other cases where they've approved, I mean, that's a pretty substantial argument. Would you say, I'm asking for your opinion here, I guess.
I mean, each case is different, and you have to evaluate each case upon what is happening at the case. I don't know in these other instances if that was considered. Y'all may have said, well, yes, the changing the zoning into this is consistent reverting it back is consistent with the use in this area, or if it was, I haven't been present for all of them, so I don't know, or if it was, well, no, in this particular case, that property, that area around it, that's the appropriate designation for it, and just, we got some things on the fringes that when we redid the UDC, we didn't get the right zoning, or, I think you can consider all aspects of it. I don't think your hands are tied in that regard, but, I mean, again, I haven't been there for all of them, so I don't know what y'all's decisions were based on.
To that point, Rick, I think in some of the instances, we've actually approved a reversion back to the prior condition without there being any stated use on purpose. I mean, stated use on the record, like just almost reverting it in a vacuum. Here, I think we're operating not in the blind. I mean, we know precisely what the gentleman wants to do with the property.
Exactly.
And, ma'am?
I just say exactly.
Right, and so I got to be quite frank. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable taking this direction, taking this step, knowing full well what he wants to do with it, and that's no disrespect to you, none whatsoever.
So is it your understanding that his proposed
He
use
wants
is
to.
allowable in a C3? I don't believe it is.
I don't think it is, but that's not where we're gonna be, and I'm not really comfortable taking measures knowing where I'm gonna wind up down the road. You know what I mean? I know that he's
True,
gonna
but
be back before us wanting to put a used car lot
That's right.
in that location. I just don't personally, I'm not an expert, but I am a vote on this body. I don't think it's appropriate.
And I don't either.
So, I mean, I cast the vote no now, I cast the vote no
Exactly.
when we come back. And I understand that what we've done in the past, but I don't think that, to Council's point, I don't think that ties our hands with respect to any one particular case. I mean, I think we're charged and responsible for looking at these cases on a case-by-case basis. No different than when we look at the ones where somebody's in front of us and the issue is, are we gonna allow annexation? I mean, I think that I personally like to look at all the things on a case-by-case basis, and I just don't think that a used car lot, and I bought used cars, I don't think that a used car lot belongs on that block of, as you enter out downtown.
Maybe not, but we chose to impose this time frame on ourselves.
And I'd just like to
We
add
didn't
one-
make exceptions like that.
Yes, ma'am.
One last thing. if
Yes,
I
sir,
may,
Mr.
ma'am.
Clark.
As Mr. Joseph has said, many of the other applications did not share with us, and neither did Mr. Sanders have to share with us. He chose, evidently, to share what his plans were, but he did not have to share what his plans were. He could have just come in as you said, he could have just come in and said, I would like my rights restored that were taken away from me as a result of this zoning change, map amendments. I think he's been punished for sharing with the MPC office what his plans are in order to start the possible process of doing what he's proposing to do. But I just like to share that with you, that you made decisions to return property back to I-2, and now that they have legal rights to I-2 uses, and you had no idea what the proposed plans were for the property. So you shared that you have problems with what he's proposing, but you didn't have problems knowing that you were returning property back to a heavy industrial use. Just to put something on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any other comments?
I mean, I agree with that, but the problem is I can't unknow what I know. It's like if we're playing cards and I see your cards, I'm gonna change what I'm gonna play. Not intentionally, but just as a matter of now knowing what's in your hand,
Sure.
And right now, we know what is in his hand, because he said what he wanted to do.
And
So
he can-
there's no
and
need
he
of us
can-
wasting a lot of time, because he's gonna come back, and he's letting you know exactly what
He's
he
gonna come back
wants
with an
to do.
application for a special use permit,
I know,
and we can deny
But
it
you
or
can
I
deny
know,
it.
approve
but
it.
right now, since we know, we can do just what we want to do without him coming back. You call for the vote and you second, someone have to second.
Right, we're still deliberating.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments? All right, call for the vote.
And the vote is based on Mr. Rocco's motion to
To
deny. Is that
deny,
correct?
yes. A
Then
vote
we
of
vote no.
yes will deny the application. A vote of no will deny the motion.
A vote of no will deny.
The motion, the
Okay.
motion, not the application.
Oh, well, if I vote yes, I'm denying it, right?
If you vote yes, yeah, you're denying the application, you're approving your motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Did I do it right?
Passes.
Motion denied. No, it's denied, because there's four.
Okay, that motion, that application, I'm sorry, is denied. All right, the next case, case number 19439C. Wait, did I skip one? Yes, I skipped one. I'm sorry, 19428C, special use permit and site plan. The applicant is Alan Taylor.
Alan Taylor, 2040 Evergreen Drive,
Welcome.
Shreveport, Louisiana, 71118. Thank you. Came here today because I have a desire to open a bar on Texas Avenue in the West End District. I purchased this property a little over 2 years ago with that intent. And I was informed recently that all bars, taverns, pubs require special use permit. And for that, I did the application and paid for the application. And just Friday evening, I got the staff report on it. And it pretty much it had some information in it that was concerning for me about the application. So I thought it would be in my best interest to make sure I'm here. Describe the area. The zone is C3 for. I don't have my glasses, so I'm really having a hard time here. General commercial zoning, I apologize. It also states a special use permit is required for a bar whenever it is established in a non-downtown commercial district. The revision took place December 31st of 2018, and that's what I was informed. And that's when it changed. I had already purchased the building. I had already started doing some painting and had some work done on the building and everything. Prior to the revision, let me see. Prior to the revision, the only requirement from the MPC was a site plan review. So that was the big change with that. In the remarks of the staff report, it identified section 16.3 of the UDC that provides me as the applicant with the opportunity to apply for the special use permit. Approval of a special use permit is based on, on balancing 12 development standards and design specifications. The remarks of the staff report goes on to state that the patrons of the bar will be expected to park their vehicles within the shoulder of the roadway, and since the bar requires special use permit approval, the parking provided must satisfy the acceptable criteria of that. Well, it also stated that in relationship to the, also states that each special use permit must be evaluated on an individual basis in relation to the applicable standards in the Uniform Development Code. With that being said, part of the code is 8.11, parking exemptions. Under B5 is stated existing non-residential structures that are 60 years of age or older as of the effective date of the code that currently do not provide the required amount of parking on the lot to accommodate parking or exempt from all off-street vehicle parking requirements. So the MPC staff also determined that the proposed on-street parking will have a negative impact on the circulation of traffic and the patrons entering and exiting their vehicles. On Texas Avenue, on that part of Texas Avenue, there's parking lanes on both sides of the street. There's actually white lines painted on the street for parking. And there's facilities throughout there that's not being used. So it's not a congested area. There is some traffic in that area, but it's not congested in any way. The area is also well lit. So there's plenty of lights. It's along a bus route, so there's other forms of transportation to get to and from that particular area. The building is located in the 1800 block of West End Avenue. On the 1800 block of Texas Avenue in the West End area, where many of the buildings are not being utilized and require some attention to bring them up to code. That's the goal of me and my neighbors and I, is to occupy the buildings, bring them up to code, make that area thrive once again. There used to be, a lot of retail. There was furniture stores there. There was banks there. Train depot, different things was down there in that area. There was a lot of things in that area, but now it's nothing there. When I got there, when I purchased that building, there was nothing going on in that area. So that's the goal. That's the vision, is to be able to open up different things for people to come out there, whether it's entertainment, restaurants, different things like that. There are some empty lots down there. I've been attempting to get some of them, but that's been a challenge, getting those lots. I feel like Section 8.11 of the UDC is specifically designed for an area like this, where back when that area was first built, there was no parking. All these structures out there, there was no parking there except the street parking and public transportation. And that's why it's not any parking there. And I feel like that's what 8.11 of the UDC is for. Also, I've talked to my neighbors there, whether they're actively in their building or not. I've talked to all the neighbors. Louisiana Daiquiri Cafe is right next to me. I've talked to the owners there. They're in support of it. I've talked to Mr. Fred Johns across the street, Mr. Jeffrey Little, B.J. Davis. I've talked to all my neighbors. Bo Wilkins was down there with the electrical company. I had him do some work. He pulled a permit, came and got me up to code. So I just feel like we was going in the right direction with this, and this change, I really didn't know about it until I went down there and did the special use permit that I paid for. Just wanted to highlight a couple of points real quick about the revision. Again, it was on 12/31/18, and I registered my business with the state of Louisiana and the parish on 10/4/18, and that was prior to that revision. And that's pretty much what I wanted to come to say. I really do like that area, and that's why I purchased that building. I had to have a vision for that area and would like to see it thriving once again. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Taylor? Just a second.
Oh.
Does anyone have questions?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Ramirez?
In your application, I'm sorry I didn't see, but how many occupants would be allowed in that building? It looks like it's about 4,000 square feet, something like that.
It's 3805.
3,800.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you have a shared parking agreement with the daiquiri store? They have a lot. I just saw they have a lot behind that.
Yeah, I hadn't got with them on that because they're using it, so.
But yeah, okay.
Excuse me, according to Mr. Clark, did you hear the question?
No, ma'am, I'm
I wanted to just
sorry.
ask, because in my reading, it said that they would not allow you to use their parking space, but I heard you said yes. Did you just say?
I didn't say yes.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say yes.
Okay.
I-
Because you would
I-
have to park on
I
the
haven't,
street.
I haven't asked them about that.
Okay, well, Mr. Clark?
No, Mrs. Smith, the only thing that we are aware of is that it is quite a congested area. This is a two-lane street, and there's parking on both sides of the street, which makes it extremely dangerous. And the fact that there is no provisions whatsoever available for any off-street parking. Those were the things that we were noting in the staff report.
Yeah, that
Well,
was,
that,
that was gonna be my question. Mr. Taylor, how you doing?
all right, how you doing?
Okay. It seems that from my review of the staff report, that they were in favor of what you're proposing. It seems to me from limited discussion that the only issue is the parking. And so are you in agreement with, I think Mr. Flukers is here. I think he's one of the gentlemen from from the daiquiri shop.
Yeah.
Is it the sort of situation where you are in a position to at least discuss the potential parking with them? Because it seemed like that was the only issue.
That's the only issue that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I see on the pictures, there's another parking lot that belongs to the swimming school, right? Is there a swimming school like close by?
And they're not open at night, right?
They don't open at night, so.
Sometimes they have.
Yeah, they have a fenced lot.
Oh, it's fenced.
Right, but, I mean.
Yeah, I haven't talked to the swimming school.
Because it seems like parking lot is the only issue that
That's the only
we
issue?
have. So if there's any way to figure that out. And there's a vacant, right next to the swimming pool parking lot, there's a vacant lot. I don't know who owns it, but I mean, seems like there's opportunity, you know, to solve that problem.
Well, all right, we can continue discussing, but is there any more questions for Mr. Taylor?
I guess mine is, are you agreeable with discussing potential parking with at least a daiquiri shop?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Good evening. Lemar Flukers, 1881 Texas Avenue. I'm his neighbor. I'm in favor of this project. I think it's a great idea. It's needed in that area. A little background on me. I have another building further up the street. It's the 11 building. It was an old building, and I had a whole bunch of problems getting it open because of parking issues and other things that the MPC regulated. Even with the daiquiri bar, we had issues on opening that just because of little hurdles like Mr. Allen's having with parking. But if I would have given up those two businesses alone would not be existing, and the city seems to embrace it and they love it. So I'm in support of it. We haven't talked about parking. He literally just called me the other day saying that parking was an issue. And I think even though he will be somewhat competition with us, I think he's going after the motorcycle demographics. So it's a motorcycle bar. So I don't know if that has any bearing on parking or not, but I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. But we're all supportive of the project, along with the other neighbors that he mentioned earlier.
Good to see you, Mr.
Yes, thank you very much for, any questions for, is it Flukers? Okay. Anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Welcome, Councilman.
Lavette Fuller, 505 Travis Street. If you deny this right now because of parking, you'd be denying parking for a bar. People live to bars. Trust me on that. That was a joke. You would be denying an opportunity for commerce in an area of my district that is trying to come back and is trying to become more vibrant. And in a lot of cases, when people come to a district like that, you don't need to double the parking because they can park in one space and then the area becomes walkable. And now you have an opportunity for there to be two locations people walk in and out of, in addition to going around the corner to Herbie K's. If you allow enough commerce and enough opportunity for revenue, the people who are there could actually buy one of those husks of an empty shell of a building on the corner, leave the facade up for historic facade, and put in a lot behind it. But none of that's going to happen if you deny opportunities for people to actually settle in and get some revenue on that block. Thank you.
Any questions for Councilman Fuller?
I actually think that area is a great area for bars. I can picture like pubs, like in Austin or in downtown Houston and everywhere. If they can solve, I think it is possible, because what I see on the picture, that I think that will be a good string of revenue. But anyway.
Did you have a question for her?
No.
I have a question. It's not for council,
Okay.
for staff.
Okay, yes, Mr. Reed.
Mr. Clark, you may know the answer. In this size establishment, what would be the required number of parking spaces?
It is required to have 19 parking spaces.
19?
The ratio is 1 per 200 square feet.
Okay. And the reason why I asked this is because I can see both sides. I want the economic development, but I also don't want, because it is US Highway 80 that's running in front of there, it to be people are walking or running across the street because they are parking on the street. But so we could give some consideration to an approval with stipulation that the applicant provide shared parking agreement with some of the surrounding neighbors. That way we kind of at least address the problem, and it somewhat protects the community at the same time, so kind of give everyone what they want. And if it is mostly motorcycles, I've been to those places. You can have 100 people in there, and they don't take up very much parking. But and those folks are part of our community too. So I mean, at first glance, it did look like it was going to be a problem, but I think that could be a kind of a meet in the middle. If anybody else has any thoughts on that.
My only thought would be, to piggyback on that, would be either something of that nature or a simple deferral until he can come back to staff with an agreement. I don't think that obtaining a parking agreement, given the nature of the establishment, is going to be excessively onerous or would take a great deal of time. I think it's just maybe a couple of conversations with the interested parties.
But if we approve it instead of defer it, he couldn't get the CO without the parking agreement. Right. That way we wouldn't have to address it again. And then Mr. Clark can be sure that he has that in his hand, or he won't sign the CO.
You're talking about a stipulation.
The stipulation,
right. I'd be in agreement
rather
with
than
that.
just to defer it and pushing it down the road.
Right.
Because the sooner he gets open, the sooner he generates taxes and puts people to work.
Right.
And
And just for the record, Mr. Ramirez, I had an opportunity to pass that responsibility on to Mr. Jordan.
That's right.
And he would be required, these things, experience, wisdom, has taught me that Mr. Joseph's suggestion is a better suggestion, but that he would need, if you are so inclined, we think that it's a public safety issue and it's dangerous to pedestrians, and this is not a walking area, a walkable area. It could possibly at some point develop into a walkable area. But if you're so inclined to approve this, we would hope that you would possibly defer and allow him to work out his parking issues.
And you say work those out, what would be suitable for
What
you?
Mr. Joseph suggested, either buying another building and doing like Councilwoman
Oh, I see.
had implied, Fuller had implied, or having a legal, we're not talking about just meeting with somebody on the corner and say, can I use your parking spaces? We're just having a legal shared parking agreement that's filed in the clerk of court's office.
And I've done one of those before,
Yes.
so I'm familiar with it. That's why I suggested that if, but that's the stipulation that I was referring to is him satisfying whoever is in charge of issuing the CO with and if he doesn't satisfy those requirements, he never gets the CO. So.
And it's either way.
But yeah, it's still, it allows the board not to have to, he doesn't have to wait on the next meeting. At whatever point he gets the status, the stipulation satisfied, he takes it to the head of zoning and it gets approved immediately. Instead of having us hear it again. That's why I was.
Your choice.
That's it, thank you.
Can I have a question?
Yes,
Are we still?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Oh, I'm just trying to figure out where we are. Are we still hearing speakers in support? I haven't invited anyone to speak in opposition yet, so I'd like to move on with that process before we deliberate. But is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? All right, seeing none, what is your pleasure?
So, street parking could be an option for certain period of time until he gets a permanent solution. Is either yes or no?
It's either yes or no. He either has off-street parking, and that is the only way that we could possibly issue a certificate of occupancy in order to get open. If he doesn't have it, we will never issue a certificate of occupancy.
Because if we were, I mean, just theoretically, if we were gonna approve today with street parking, I don't see an issue with just that bar. The problem is that someone else comes and buys another bar or opens, and they will have the same right to park on the street just because of what the decision that we're making today.
And if I'm understanding you, you're saying that if an additional applicant comes and rents a space or buys a building and opens up a bar, they would have the same problems. They would have to meet, they would have to get a special use permit to meet the same requirements.
So, I mean, just theoretically, I mean, just philosophically, we say yes to the street parking, because
you can't say yes to the street.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes. Okay.
You have to say he must have off-street parking.
Right.
But if he has the if he has off-street parking, the city's, I believe we will have done our due diligence or done our best to enforce the laws that are on the books. If they park in front of the building with motorcycles on that area where people generally do park up and down Texas Street, that's between them and Shreveport Police if they're becoming a traffic hazard. But I feel like the staff at that point has said, we did our job, we enforced what is on the books, and the rest is between him and the police department if they're becoming a traffic hazard.
So would our stipulation be that he get a certificate of occupancy, basically? Because
No.
you can't get that, right, without the
No, no, no.
appropriate parking?
My suggestion will be when we make a motion, and I'm kind of looking to how to put all this together, is to approve his application, provided that he brings to the zoning administrator a shared parking agreement for 19 spaces or whatever the requirement is.
Which he would have to have before he could begin business anyway.
That's
with
right.
the
So,
certificate
but
of
we don't
occupancy.
have to hear it again. So if
Right.
we defer it, it just makes us hear it again.
No, right, I hear what you're saying, but.
So if we just put that stipulation in there, the day he gets those signed, he can come in and have his CO printed, and he moves forward, and we never deal with it again.
That it's been filed in the courts.
Well, whatever that they require, yes, to satisfy the zoning administrator or the executive director. He'll make the.
He can't get it anyway. He can't get the certificate without it, so.
That's what I'm saying.
It's kind of redundant anyway, but I see what you're saying.
It's, once we make this, that's just a way for us to just to move past this, and not the staff have to put it back on the agenda, and this gentleman have to come back to the meeting and all. It just,
And us have to do this again.
yes.
All right, do you have a motion?
Motion to
Second.
approve with the stipulation that the applicant provide shared parking agreement documents for all the parking spaces required by the UDC. And he'll provide that to the zoning administrator before he gets his certificate of occupancy.
Okay, I have a motion to approve with
And
those
I second.
stipulations by Mr. Remedes and a second by Ms. Smith. Any further discussion? I'll call, yes, sir.
Mr. Clark, did he cover everything that we need to make sure that comes?
I think he did, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
Thank you for that clarification.
yes, thank you. Call for the vote.
Good job.
And that application is approved with that stipulation. So just please feel free to meet with our staff to make sure you understand the stipulation so it will go smoothly. Thank you. Okay, are we on to the amendments now? Case number 19-439C and 19-320P, UDC amendments. And will it be Mr. Bailey addressing?
Thank you, Madam Chair. These amendments are simple housekeeping and corrective changes, mainly due to oversight, grammatical mistakes, contradictions, or missing items. They're part of our annual, our semi-annual, or quarterly, ever how you want to put it, UDC updates. I just passed out a summary. I can go through these one by one. I can paraphrase it however you'd like. We're adding definitions. We're amending fenestration design standards. We're updating some use terminology and use standards, like I said. Updating on-site development standards for home-based businesses, off-street parking, sign regulations. A couple of the big ones down on Article 16 has to do coming from City Council, where they would like language added to be able to remand a special use permit decision that you may, or recommended to them to be remanded back to you. Those are some of the big ones, or that's the big one. What's your pleasure? I mean, I can talk, I can go through them. I'm going to let y'all decide on.
We've already been through them, so, or I have, we have, not, those of us who were at the meeting.
I have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Remedes.
And I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I just want to be sure that this doesn't become a boomerang like it had before. But number 26 on the billboards, so we're not opening Pandora's box. The newly rezoned property required to obtain approved site plan and active building permit. Now, how is that? What's the change there, or?
We just, and then, we just wanted to clarify because that it's not totally clear that the ordinance requires that you cannot come in and request and get property rezoned from whatever classification to meet the requirement of a billboard without having development, and he defined what the development had to consist of.
So currently it says that no property may be rezoned to one of the permitted allowable districts for the sole purpose of allowing the erection of a billboard. We added the language after that says any property that has been rezoned within the past 24 months shall, 1, obtain an approved site plan, 2, acquire an active building permit, and 3, commence active construction on the site for use other than a billboard prior to any submittal of an application for a billboard. So
So you just, basically, that provision, that's just preventing putting billboards on empty property.
Correct.
I just tried to make it simple. I didn't go through the long, drawn-out, in-depth process. I tried to make it simple for you.
And we love you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's all the questions.
I have a question. Mr. Bailey, could you get into, just to describe a little bit more about Article 4, Item 5? It's about the fenestration.
Correct. We're adding part of the table on fenestration design to where that all sides or rear-facing facades that face the public right-of-way must maintain a total transparency of at least 10%.
So is that an increase from where you are?
Well, it
now?
currently doesn't exist. What we're trying to do is prevent complete blank facades that face the right-of-way. And so if it...
I'm just thinking there may be a reason, a good reason why you would want that, and from a design situation, and not want to put fake windows on the building. But that's just, it's more restrictive, I guess. I want to clarify.
It is. You are correct.
What you're proposing.
Yes.
Would be more.
You have
Okay.
anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to clarify that just a little bit, from
So-
Mr. Albertson's.
Advocate for your position.
Is it wholesale that we approve or that we deny, or we
I've
postpone this?
asked Mr. Jean to elaborate just a little bit more before you make a decision.
One of the things right now, Chris, that we have is, we talk about the front of the building, and sometimes the front does not face the right-of-way. And we came up with what we thought was a very limited amount of fenestration that would still not have us have somebody call something the front, but face it away from the right-of-way, and then we have this blank wall that's facing the street. That's the reason why we wanted to do this, because right now it's not addressed, and it just says the front of the building, and we're just saying there are times when it's really putting one of the lesser attractive sides of the building facing the street, and all we're saying is if you're going to do that, provide some limited fenestration, and that's what we were trying to. So you may look at it as an additional requirement. It was really not addressed. It really was something that was not fleshed out in the ordinance clearly, and there was kind of a loophole that we tried to close.
Well, there may be a design, I guess what I'm getting at, there may be a design solution that doesn't involve fenestration that would allow the elevation that's in question, if it's on a right-of-way, to look appropriate according to whatever.
Like the fake windows with the shutters and the trim to give the appearance of windows, but not provide the security issues that come with, like if you have a warehouse, those sort of things.
We allow that now. We allow you to come up with basically a faux window or some other, in order to deal with that. And I think if you can pull up the definition of fenestration.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
You're ahead of me.
Yeah.
Because I think even developments that we've worked with you on in the past, we went back in and looked at that definition, and we do.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
We
I don't know if that's
openings,
the right word.
Right.
There's a way to there may be another design solution that doesn't include fenestration that would be appropriate.
Well, the amendment calls for transparency, but in the definition of fenestration, it calls out typically the window treatment in a building or a building facade. Also, a general term used to denote the pattern or arrangement of openings and doors in a facade or a surface.
So if we change that language to say fenestration in accordance with that definition that he just read, would that be something that you would be okay with?
Doesn't it sound like that definition assumes there's an actual?
Would it be better if we just go back and revisit
For lack
that?
of a better word.
Pull that one out of the list of ordinances and amendments and go back and revisit. and
I
have those
understand the
discussions.
intent, I just think there may be other ways of
And
addressing it.
that's why I'm
that
suggesting we
make
can
it-
pull that and have additional discussion on that amendment.
Approved with
Mhm.
the exception of Article 5. Article
Amendment
4,
5.
Amendment 5. And we can sit down and have some more discussions on another way or alternative way of doing exactly what you and us want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That what?
Yeah, I like that idea. Thank you.
We're waiting on a motion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the amendments with the exception of Article 4, number 5, and that be pending further discussion and development.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Elverson to approve with that exception, and a second by Mr. Remedes. Further discussion, call for the vote. And that motion is approved. So we'll come back and talk fenestration.
We will talk again.
They'll talk.
Those are in-
They will talk. We will vote. It'll work out.
Okay, so, old business, any committee chair reports? Anything from the, master plan committee in particular? I'm always anxious.
The master plan committee will be meeting, for those of you who are on the committee, will be meeting Friday from 12 to 1.
Okay.
That includes the three of you and Councilwoman Fuller. Your chair.
Still here.
Bless you. Okay, very good. Meeting, somebody, is Leah on that committee?
Bless
Should I
you.
let her know?
Yes.
Bless you. Okay, I'll let her know that that's Friday. Friday from 12
Dale.
and Dale too? Okay. Friday 12 to 1. And Mr.
12 to 1.
Boca?
I think that's,
Uh-huh. Okay.
I think it's Mr. Andrews, Mr. Roca, Ms. Leah Demonto,
Good committee.
and Ms. Smith.
Okay, and, new business, something about research?
I'll be real brief. The majority of you listened to our new initiatives during the lunch period. We understood that the neighborhood participation program, you wanted to possibly us to come back with some additional information in December. But I was wondering, are you receptive to us bringing forth the new district, the redevelopment, mixed-use district, for your review and public hearing in December?
Yes. Yes.
We will do that.
Do we need a motion on that?
And along
Oh.
with that, there will be additional amendments that Mr. Bailey will present in December.
More cleanups.
Okay.
There was just too many to put
Just
on.
never gonna end. It's like
It does not
housekeeping.
appear it's gonna end. I really get a little worn out with it.
It's a fluid document.
But that's what fluid means.
Yes, will just always be. Mr. Clark, anything in particular for your director's report? Other than?
Three things that I'm quiet. I thought we were gonna have a quick meeting. We were gonna be out of here by 4 o'clock today. We are, the MPC Staff Appreciation Social will be at Country Tavern December the 18th from 12 to 2. Country Tavern, as you well know, we've been there before. It has a big room. We looked at some other venues, but it has a big room that would encompass both boards and the staff. We estimated like 35 to 37 people. So we needed that extra space. We are still looking at possibly pulling together a MPC retreat January the 10th, 2010. That is the period that we are trying to negotiate with in order to be able to have some information from strong towns and concerning annexation and other things. Charles Marone, that's his name, will be in town, excuse me, anyway, on that date, so we're trying to coordinate with him for a afternoon retreat. That's June 10th, 2010, basically from 12 to 2 and 3. And that's on a Friday, so we're just trying to get this in your calendars that in case everything turns out well, that you would take out the time to come to the retreat. I think it'd be interesting. You will continue to receive annexation cases, and there is discussion on the council, and there are different sides on the council, pro and anti-annexation. So just give you a different idea concerning annexation. On Saturday morning, just a reminder to Mr. Eberson, Mr. Roca, and Mr. Joseph, there will be Planning Commission training. It will be done by the state. They will be here from 8 to 12 Saturday morning. The training will happen in the Skybox at Independence Stadium. And hopefully all of you have received the information you need from Emily, and you have your tickets and passes, so there'll be no problem. Other than that, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right, have a motion to adjourn? Or anything else?